Is the US dollar's dominance coming to an end? What does that mean for the US? The US dollar has been the world's most dominant currency for the better part of 70 years, really since World War II. However, in recent times, in the recent months, really recent years, if you've been paying attention, more and more countries have been looking to subvert the US dollar's dominance. Now, if you would indulge me, I might get a little bit more political than you're used to coming from this channel or coming from me. But I'll just say flat out that, and if you've been following this channel for a while, you know I don't really align perfectly with a side. I have viewpoints that would piss enough people on both sides, and really that's the way it should be because I think for myself. All right, so is the US dollar losing its dominance? Let's get down to brass tacks and flat out say yes, unfortunately it is. The US dollar is currently losing some of the weight that it enjoyed really after World War II as the world's reserve currency, the world's most powerful currency, and since 1973, the petrodollar, meaning that all oil exports around the world are transacted in US dollars. So in this video, I'm going to get to what it means for the US dollar to lose its dominance, why it's happening, and what can we expect in the long term if it actually gets worse. So since World War II, the US has really enjoyed its place as the world's most dominant superpower. Not only politically and economically, we've had the strongest GDP for decades now, and it still continues to be so, but also in terms of its currency, the US dollar. See, the more that the US dollar is used in different facets, not only in oil, but also in treasuries, which we will get into later, the stronger it is. Moreover, most countries haven't enjoyed the stability that we have enjoyed in the United States since World War II. Of course, we've had catastrophic market crashes like 2000, 2008. However, it does not compare to the instability that we've seen in most other countries. So not only do other countries give us their goods and services in exchange for these little pieces of paper, but then they lend our dollars back to us in the form of treasuries, right? They buy our treasuries, meaning our national debt. And by the way, our national debt right now is over $30 trillion. So when you hear on the news, people talk about the national debt, it's in the form of treasuries, meaning people buy treasuries and the US government owes them more money back. That's how treasuries work. And when we need more money, we just simply issue more treasuries and print them out of thin air because we know that countries enjoy the strength of our currency and they're willing to buy treasuries up to an endless amount. So when we need more money, we issue more treasuries. So not only do we give our dollars in exchange for goods and services, but then they also give us those dollars back in exchange for these treasuries, and those dollars are locked up somewhere. Actually, they're digital nowadays, but you know, basically they were locked up by the central bank or the treasury. And because our country is so relatively strong militarily, economically, and like we said, which leads to our currency being so strong, we haven't really thought about what would happen if countries stop buying these treasuries, or worse, if they start selling these treasuries. So why is the dollar losing its prominence? Why is it losing its standing as the #1 currency in the world's reserve currency? So as we said, the US has really enjoyed this superpower status for over 70 years since World War II. And countries like Russia are, have always been looking for ways to subvert the United States and subvert the United States control globally, especially in areas like the Middle East, for instance, or even in Europe. You also have countries that are part of what we call emerging markets, which for the first time are really playing a new empowered role on the world stage. So you have countries such as Brazil, such as China, such as Saudi Arabia. So when you combine the fact that the US has held this position for so long, and that these countries are now emerging both in terms of their political power, but also their economic power. You combine that with the fact that our spending is out of control and the fact that we are just issuing treasuries up the wazoo, accumulating debt. Now, all of these countries own our debt to the tune of over $30 trillion. No doubt this is a recipe for a profound sea change. Also, these countries are looking at the US dollar. They look at the success that the US has enjoyed on the world stage since World War II, and they are looking to emulate this. And they know that the currency was one of the main tools in which the US was able to achieve this dominance. So not only are some of these countries tired of bolstering the US dollar through using it for all of their transactions, really feeling like they've been forced to use it. But they also want a piece of the pie. They want to enjoy some sort of currency autonomy themselves, independent of a strong US dollar. All right, so that's the why, but how are they doing it? Well, if you pay attention to the headlines recently, there are a number of ways in which the US dollar is currently being circumvented, or the attempt to be circumvented. The first one that comes to mind is an alliance called BRICS. This is really an economic alliance between Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, with a few other countries that are looking to join, such as Saudi Arabia. Now, the crazy thing is that we are also seeing countries that used to be our strongest allies tired of this sort of unilateral US dollar relationship with the rest of the world. We also have China, of all countries, brokering an agreement between Iran and Saudi Arabia, which are two sworn enemies to the death. I mean, Iran and Saudi Arabia, think of like the two most adversarial groups of people. Think of like Donald Trump supporters and Hillary Clinton supporters finally coming to a table and playing a softball game together. Or LeBron James fans and Michael Jordan fans coming together and having a barbecue cookout. So Iran and Saudi Arabia are two of the top 5 oil producing countries in the world. Like I said, they are sworn enemies. And what does China have to do with the Middle East? Well, nothing. But they've seen and paid attention to how the U.S. were able to use Middle Eastern politics for their own benefit. And they want the same opportunity to assert their power and really kick the U.S. out of the picture. And Iran and Saudi Arabia, two of the top 5 oil-producing countries in the world, are also looking for some sort of power and some sort of autonomy. And they saw this as a potential to form an alliance that would, once again, topple the U.S. dominance in the region. Same reason why Russia was meddling in the Syrian conflict, where it seemingly didn't really have a hand in it to begin with, but they also didn't want the U.S. to have full autonomy over what goes on there. So they naturally took the opposing side that the U.S. was on. Now, back to the currency, over the last few weeks, we've also seen the first natural gas transaction, or LNG transaction, in Chinese yuan between China and the UAE. These were traditionally settled in US dollars, and that was the first transaction settled in yuan. Now, that doesn't really count as petrol, but it is a step below, right? So we are getting there. So now the important part: what happens if the US loses its dominance, loses its world reserve currency status? Well, this really depends on the extent of it. I don't think the US is going to lose its world currency reserve status just yet. It might happen in our lifetime. It might happen in the next generation's lifetime. I don't know. But for sure, the dollar is getting weaker. So what does that lead to? What consequences does that lead to? In general, that will make the import of goods and services much more expensive as the US dollar weakens in power relative to foreign currencies. And since we don't produce anything ourselves because we've relied so much on foreign workers and foreign goods and services, this is going to be catastrophic initially, right? The US is no longer a producing country. We don't manufacture anything here. Also, our national debt. Remember those pieces of paper that we use to exchange US dollars for? Those are called US treasuries. And if nobody is buying our debt, then one, our currency value is going to tank, but two, our interest rates are going to spike. If no one buys US treasuries, or worse, sells the treasuries that they have, or both, which is actually the worst outcome, then that is going to spike interest rates and make things more expensive for the government, but also make things more expensive for US consumers and cause businesses to stagnate, right? With high interest rates, US businesses do not grow as much. And then obviously this can have vast geopolitical ramifications if the US is not respected like it once was on the world stage. And there are many parts of our financial system that can really burst where it is not obvious, right? I mean, if our entire system is relying on this sort of notion that the US dollar is strong and that's never going to go away, and so we piled up $30 trillion of national debt on the basis of that, but that is no longer true, then there are so many things within the financial system, especially when we're talking about such a large amount, that can really break that are unforeseen currently. So here are my closing thoughts. Really, it didn't have to happen this way. This is what happens when unchecked greed is running its course. We never cared to educate our own citizens. We've made college progressively more expensive to where going to college now is like taking out a mortgage, right? Instead of providing free college or extremely cheap college to our citizens to make sure that we have enough skilled workers and we don't have to import workers and we can start manufacturing things in the US as opposed to relying on foreign countries for our manufacturing. I've worked in Silicon Valley for over 15 years before I started trading professionally. And I could tell you that it was actually very difficult to find skilled American workers. We had to use our H-1B visa allocations in order to import foreign workers. And I have no problem with foreign workers, but I do have a problem with our country really turning a blind eye to the importance of educating our citizens because we want to make everything for profit, including the college system. We underestimated China by thinking of them as some lowly communist country that's only there to make our Nikes and our iPhones, sending every piece of manufacturing to them, everything from your microwave to your guitar, to your shoes, to your phones, to your monitors, everything is made by China. Over time, while we were underestimating them, they've learned how to play the game the way that we've been playing it for so long on the world stage. We printed money to oblivion, almost to comical numbers. I remember when, I was in my early 20s and it was the great financial crisis. Actually, I was in my mid 20s. And during the great financial crisis, I remember when they did the $800 billion bailout, right? The one that was sanctioned by Bush and then finally executed by Obama when he first came into power during his first year. 800 billion, the media was freaking out, economists were freaking out, financial analysts were freaking out. Our balance sheet, the Fed's balance sheet, is now $9 trillion and our national debt is 30 trillion. I mean, we're talking about, if you were creating a comic book of just the most absurd financial numbers in this imaginary comic book world, you would be using these numbers, right? This is how crazy these numbers are. So we printed money up the motherfucking ass. We elected weak and unqualified presidents only to bicker amongst ourselves about what race the Little Mermaid is or who can piss in what bathroom. It didn't have to be like this. Now, I don't think the Chinese yuan stands a chance in the short term of, supplanting the US dollar as the world reserve currency. I don't think so, because they don't operate on a free market, and the Chinese government, has routinely devalued and inflated the value of its currency as it sees fit. And I don't think that the world stage is ready to put all of their eggs in that kind of basket. And I don't think the Chinese government is going to turn to a free market economy overnight. However, if major superpowers go down this path of dismantling U.S. hegemony or the primacy of the U.S. dollar, it would be a catastrophic slow death, a death by 1,000 cuts, if you will. Anyway, guys, sorry to depress you. We will keep updating you as the story progresses. Let me know in the comment section what you think about my commentary. I would love to hear from you, even if you disagree. What you think the outcome is going to be, how bad you think the situation is. Do you think it's overblown? Do you think it's understated? Would love to hear from you. Give this video a thumbs up, even if you disagree, but you learned something, give it a thumbs up and sign up for our free market update. It will get sent to your email box for free. Link is in the description below. Again, just put your email address. Stay safe out there, traders. Peace.